every organization is a group of people who agree to do something together for a wished impact. That's the purpose of the organization. The processes are our agreements about how we work together. The structure is our agreements, how we group ourselves. But when you ask, hey, and what is it that you'd like to have instead? Usually there is silence in the room.
Elvira.
Thank you.
And also with me is Seb Finley,
Hey.
who's helping out with this, and both of us are really excited to talk to him.
I think I'm representing some of the EODF community and just being interested in what you're saying. So.
Wonderful, but I also would like to think I'm also representing the EODF community. Yeah, cool.
Brilliant. Well, let's go back. Let's rewind a few years and tell us about what got you into org design. Where did the idea of working in this space start from, and what prompted you to follow this path?
That's a very nice story, actually. And if you heard Paul with his message to me about the award, what he was referring to once upon a time, about 15 years ago, we met for a coffee. Because I was doing organization development, that was my profession. I was actually chairing the Hungarian Organization Development Association, and we organized a massive conference in OD in 2010, which Paul missed. But he moved to Vienna, and he started searching in Europe for people who are doing org design, and he thought maybe, while he's in Budapest, he can meet with someone and figure out that if maybe in our OD community there are some people who are doing organization design. So I was coming back from a workshop that day, and at the end of the day I said, okay, we can meet at the Basilica, let's have a coffee. Here's this American who moved to Vienna, interesting guy. And the more we were talking about organization design, because of course I wanted to know, so what do you mean by it? What is org design? And this question, what is the difference between org development and org design? It's still hanging around in the air, but it's a wrong question, but we maybe come back to that later. And the more he was talking about org design, the more I was telling him, but what you are talking about is something what I'm doing constantly with my clients. I was at the time working mainly with medium-sized companies here in Hungary, and with a medium-sized company, when you start doing OD work, you do have to touch the strategy, you do have to touch the processes, the structure. So not just the behavioral part of OD, which is OD pretty much dealing with here, but really the harder stuff as well. And it was just part of it. And I even told him, it was very funny because at the Hungarian OD Association, we initiated a project where we were collecting best practices, and you could apply to it. There was some prize, you could win it. And to show a good example, me also as a chair, I told my two young colleagues, come on, we should kind of roll up one of our projects and apply to it to show people that it is something to do. And the jury, who was kind of evaluating these projects and applications, said that, well, half of what we are doing is not OD. And the half they were pointing out is not OD, was the org design part. Exactly. And for me, that was a very important moment to understand that I'm probably not the only one who is doing org design, but in contrary to the UK, for example, or America, where organization design is an established profession, and you talk about it, and you have the words for it, and you know the principles of it, here we're doing it without knowing much about it. And for me, that was something where my interest really sparked, that my clients are not interested in which professional background I'm bringing in my knowledge from. The interest is that when they want to develop their organizations, I am there with all the tools that they need, and they don't care if it's org design or org development, or like we just heard today, or service design. It's almost the same. From whichever direction you're coming in, you need all this knowledge to help them to elevate to the next level.
It's fascinating you talk about being drawn to org design without even knowing the name, without even having a sort of a spot to place it, just knowing that that was something that was compelling.
Yeah, and the more I learned about it, the more I understood how much we are actually doing it, and not just me, but other people, which kind of led me, and then it's in retrospective for the last 15 years, looking back, I'm at a point today when, or in the last 5 years, I've been talking about how we can actually help leaders and people in organizations to realize that they are also doing organization design every day, and by not knowing it, not knowing the language of it, not knowing the principles of it, they trying to do it in the best possible way, but maybe they don't have the full set of the concepts of how to do that.
So we'll get to those concepts in a minute. I'd love to dig in deeper. But just before we do, Paul Tolchinsky referred to that meeting with you, that coffee, as one of the most treasured memories of his life. So I suspect that it wasn't just that you talked about org design. There must have been something deeper there.
No, there was, and that's also a funny thing. You know, in your professional life, sooner or later you realize what your purpose is. And I often tell people that, well, to figure out what your purpose is, you don't have to kind of sit down and think about it. Just look back into your life and see what are the things you cannot not do.
Yeah.
And for me, it was always building a community. So from very early in my childhood, where I'm coming from, I was an active member of bringing our community together. I was still a teenager with the Hungarian Organization Development Association. There was an association, but at the time, while I was chairing it, we did manage to actually double the size of it and finally bring young, interested people into it, and not just the old ones who originally established the organization. And in lots of other areas of my life. So I think that's what probably Paul saw as an asset, and I just could not do it. So the conversation went into, okay, so if here I am doing this, not knowing, let's look around Europe, who else does it? And he very elegantly just invited me to the next EODF conference in Vevey, Nestlé headquarters. And I very naively just went to learn more about org design and meet the community. And at the time it was a lot smaller community, of course, and kind of half of the conference people came from Nestlé, which was also mind-blowing that there are organizations where there are 30 people doing org design, and here we are, and we don't even have a name for it. So really unbelievable. That's where I met with Holacracy the first time also. Bernard Marie brought it over like the new operating model that can save the world, and since we know, I mean, it evolved a lot since, but so being part of the community, connecting with people, and then also, then he said, you know, there is this board meeting, we're going to try to create an organization out of these enthusiasts, and I said, I can come. I mean, I was leading an 18-year-old professional membership organization. So I can come, maybe I can tell you a few of the mistakes that we did in Hungary so that we don't repeat them, or you don't repeat them with your community. I was still kind of thinking it's, his community.
Nothing to do with you, just,
No, and we've been sitting there for 2 days and talking about a lot of things, and then we started thinking about roles, and we decided that there will be a registered organization and who will be responsible for what. And I was sitting there like, I'm already a chair of a professional organization, so I'm here to support you guys, great stuff. And every role was already delivered. Of course, we agreed that Paul should be the first chair of the organization. And then they started talking about, we need a co-chair who could support Paul. And suddenly I looked up and they were all looking at me. And I was like, what are you talking about, guys? But that's how kind of really our being partner in crime started. And that carried on. So I was a co-chair, then the chair, and then we, I mean, that was 13 years ago, I guess. And if you look at this community today and the faces are changing, so there aren't that many people from the original crowd, so there are new people coming in, but people coming in staying for years. So we met in Lisbon, that was 3 years ago, and here we are, and we're like old friends, so we know each other, and we don't meet throughout the whole year, but when we meet, the energy is here, and it's just amazing. So I guess that's what probably Paul was referring to a little bit.
I think that there's an interesting thread there, that many of the sort of the great org designers have this same calling, and this it's almost it can't be separated from the community.
And in my case it's really special also because I've actually learned organization development in a way that it was a pilot program supported by Levi-Strauss Foundation at the time, and it was organization development for non-profit organizations and community development. So they were teaching it together, and I guess that was a proper fit for me also. So my personal interest, purpose, meeting with this, and of course I could never look at organizations also any differently than a community of people, whether they know it or not. And that comes very much in also in how I work with organization, or the approaches I use.
You used a phrase yesterday in your talk when you were talking about an organization being a collection of humans. Can you remind me of the wording you used?
Oh yes, that's what we tend to forget when we kind of distance ourselves from the people. Every organization is a group of people who agree to do something together for a wished impact. That's the purpose of the organization. And of course, the larger the organization, the more likely we are to forget this, that we are all there, we all contracted for this, not just with the legal contract, but a psychological contract, and that we are all there to deliver or create that impact. So everything we do in organizations is actually just based on our agreements. And that's when, for example, for me, it kind of piques my ear a bit when we say, there are the processes and the structure and the people. But the processes are our agreements about how we work together. The structure is our agreements, how we group ourselves. So, all of it is agreements in organizations.
And one of the things that appealed to me about that was that it makes organization design as a concept much more accessible, because you don't need the terminology
exactly
and the methodology.
And that's one of the things that I was telling you, that it really is my interest. How do we demystify it? Because the way we are talking about it, I got this experience very early while I was still working at Magyar Telekom, and I was bringing in a lot of org design knowledge, or I tried to, and the experience was that on a level we were talking about organization design was completely not understandable for people in the organization. And that's not good. Mm-hmm. We need to have a language that people can understand. And this is how also I was fiddling a lot with the words I'm using, or the definitions even of org design, because even still, and I don't want to challenge it in a way, but in a way I found that the definition we use for organization design officially by the European Organization Design Forum also, it's still distancing from everyday people. And I try to simplify the whole definition, and that's how I ended up with, really every organization has a design at every given moment, so you don't need us necessarily to come into design for you or design with you. And the design is the actual or actually valid explicit and implicit agreements about two things. What is the work we need to do now, and with turbulent times, the now is becoming important, and how are we going to do this? And of course, when we change these agreements, we are all developing the organization, and people are changing these agreements every day, not on a whole company level, but they meet with each other, and if something is not working, like we saw at the Formula 1 presentation, but then we talk about it, that hey, this was really a shitty procurement process, for example, and it lasted too long and nobody was happy, so how can we kind of do this next time differently?
So is that really the linchpin to how do you demystify org design, is about talking about it in a way that's much more accessible?
One is the way talking about it in a language that it's a lot more accessible, and bringing it to that level that, it's really just agreement. So often I see that even in my courses, I teach an accredited organization design course, and of course we talk about the processes and how do we redefine processes, and you see that half of my students are kind of like, process development is not something I'm really, and then to say that, hey, it's nothing more than just our agreements about the sequence of the work and who's doing what, and and to change it, you don't need to be a process development expert. If you have all the people who are working on the process in a room, so you treat them as a team, they can make new agreements about how they want to have it instead of what is there right now. So one way it is really the language to demystify or bring it down to the level that, hey, it's just agreements actually. And to change an agreement, you just need the parties there who need to make the agreement. Mm-hmm. And maybe the another part is the solution-focused approach I'd like to mention, because pretty much parallel, when I met with Paul, I also met at the same time with the solution-focused approach that's coming from coaching and actually family therapy and therapy. But how it approaches change is completely different from the traditional, we have to understand the problem and the root cause of the problem in order to fix the problem. And how it operates is actually, sometimes you don't even need to know what created the problem, because it's enough to sense the tension, which also means you don't need a burning platform, just a little tension is enough. Yeah. And we can talk about what would we like to have instead. And the instead is never only the solution for the problem, but it's always more. So I've been using this approach now for 15 years, and it works with individuals, with teams, and even large organizations or giant ecosystems. When you have the right people in the room and you talk about how would it look like when we are on the next level, when we don't have these problems, don't have these tensions. Yeah. What would our clients notice, or how would they notice that our company elevated its services, for example? What would the people in the organization notice? What would we notice? So we're actually hooking ourselves into the future. And this is what the solution-focused approach calls the preferred future. There are uncountable number of possible future scenarios, but we agree in one. We already made halfway there, because we already agreed, made our first agreements about where do we want to get, instead of focusing on the problem from what we want to get away from.
And I've seen this translate through in some, even in some of the templates that I deal with as an org designer, postcard from the future, that kind of
that's exactly
vision.
The same thing, It's
a very different way of motivating people, as opposed to the terminology of a burning platform.
Absolutely, and the other thing why I love it is that actually in coaching also it ended up being called more the brief coaching or brief therapy. It's the briefness, meaning the shortness. So by not digging deep and talking a lot about the problem, which usually just takes out the energy from the room, we're actually talking about where do we want to be, how are we going to notice it. So the more we talk about it, the more we can add nice little details to that future that we are creating together, which is one, energizing. So you always feel the energy lifting in the room, which you need if you want to create something different than what you have right now. And the other aspect is not looking at change as a linear process, but more like a spiral process, and asking always the questions, once we know where we want to get, what is it that's already here from that future? What is it that we're already doing? And quite often, and especially in the life of organizations, what we are finding is things are already there but flying under the radar. Even in a massive agile transformation, if you look, okay, but are there people who are already working, or teams who are already working agile in your organization? And probably the top management would say no, but if you would look a little bit, you would find, and that was the case, for example, in the company where I was working at the time, that there were already 30 teams experimenting with things. It was under the radar because it was not clearly said that that's something what we want to do. So in a way, it not just creates energy, but it shortens the the time that we need for change, because then we can start building on what's already there in the organization rather than making the people feel that they have to do something completely different than what they did until now.
There was something you've talked about there, which I think is a skill that all org designers really benefit from improving. And you called it the solution plus something more, and you called it the things that are flying under the radar. How do you develop that skill? How do you help to identify the things that might not be overt but are somehow hidden underneath that to find the true problems?
You mean in myself as a consultant, or in the organization? That's the wonderful thing also about the solution-focused approach, is that it actually operates with this very simple logic. So we start with the end in mind, which is of course not true. In a minute I'll tell you that we don't jump from standing. So we actually often look to the history of the organization, the history of the unit, and try to make the people see that they've been through phases and they learned a lot, they collected a lot of resources until now, and we're doing this so that they don't focus on the problem for what they invited us, but kind of helping them to widen the horizon, how they are seeing the situation, and with that we're actually inviting them to look into their own evolution already. So they see how they evolved as a team, as a unit, as an organization. So suddenly the problem that in the beginning seems like, oh my God, we have to fix this, it becomes it's another challenge in our life cycle, and we fixed already how many issues, so we're building confidence with this. And then you say, yeah, great, and then what would be the next step in this evolution, instead of asking what would be the solution for your problem. So with that, we already invited them into looking there. And then once we know where they want to go, then we ask the question, what's already here? So positive deviance, actually, we're digging into that, trying to find patterns, things. Again, we're building confidence. And with that, what we create is actually that they say, okay, so what's the next step we need to take to get closer to what we imagined for ourselves, not jumping there in one step also. Small steps, small steady steps. But we're building confidence, and the logic is super easy. And what I find is that I work once or maybe twice with people, and they get it. Because they see, wow, it's mind-blowing, wow, we're already agreed, and like we never agree on anything, and now we agreed on the future, so how is that possible? And it's possible because, of course, every organization has its purpose. So in the case of organizations, the purpose is pulling our intentions into the same direction. And we're talking about the preferred next step, not some far evolution. Nobody wishes for the preferred version of conflict with each other. So they imagine a version where there is no conflict between themselves. So what I see is that people get the hang of it very easily, which means they can ask these questions from themselves also. And you see, we're not even talking about org design here, we're just talking about a very simple sequence. But of course, it's important to know about what topics and what to bring into the conversation and what not to. So it's a lot more than just asking these questions, but with this mindset going through, for example, defining the strategy that we never define from the now, but always from the future. And if you define your strategy from 5 years on, coming backwards, you're also going to have topics that people from the now would never have come up with, but they already start preparing a future that they design together. Or when we talk about the processes, you have the people in the room who are touching, for example, your production process, and then we just ask them, hey, how would it look like when it goes smoothly? And they are able to put it together, and then we can have a look at what is it that we are already doing. Simple stop, start, continue. Again, super simple tool, but that's what the solution-focused approach says. Do more of what is working, stop doing what is not working, and try experimenting with new things and see how it goes. So you do a simple stop, start, continue, and then can start working their way towards the ideal process.
It's fascinating.
It's superb, yeah.
It's fascinating
super
hearing
easy.
you describe it, because you've mentioned demystification, and what you've now described is people just talking about their work and talking about their view on work.
And they can talk about that. And whenever you ask them, they actually can tell you how they could do things better. And that was something that I also learned in working in a large corporation, that most of the frustration people have and the most of the disengagement is coming because nobody hears them when they already see that, oh God, we're doing this thing again, this in a stupid old way, when it would be so much easier to do it differently.
It sounds so easy.
It is easy, yeah.
But we all know that there's difficulties and problems. And there were a couple of things you mentioned there about the things you shouldn't talk about, or the roadblocks and problems along the way in that process. What do people need to know about how to make the process easy, the things that they should be avoiding focusing on or avoiding bringing into the room?
No, I don't think there's anything that they could not bring into the room. But what I would say is maybe how we facilitate these conversations. And for example, a lot of people, or the critics of the solution-focused approach, say, oh, this is one of these positive psychology, fluffy pink thingy, and you know, people are frustrated or they have problems, so what's happening with the problems? And I think it's very important to say that, one, it's important to acknowledge that why we are in the room, and even talk about it or even give a name to it. But how much time we spend on talking about what we usually already talking about in the coffee corner or on the corridors of the organization, or how much time we spend on this preferred future, so how would it look like when it would be not like this, so what do we want to have instead? That's the crucial thing. And maybe that's also the mind shift that happens very early in these processes, is that people have the vocabulary for their problems. So if you are not wary of it, you can fill a whole day with just talking about the problem, and because that's what we do, we have the words for it. But when you ask, hey, and what is it that you'd like to have instead? Usually there is silence in the room.
Yeah.
And that's a very useful, creative silence, when people really have to imagine it and then they have to verbalize it, something that they have not had the possibility to practice it before. And this is, for example, what on my course I try to teach to my students as well, that don't get surprised if you don't get really good or detailed answers for the first time, because it's not something that we ask once. So maybe initially in a process I'm talking with, I don't know, head of HR and the CEO, we're sitting together and I'm asking these questions, and they don't know, or they look at each other, or, oh, well, we don't want them to do this. Great, and what do you want to have them to do instead? So we are really kind of picky on this, and and sometimes it takes maybe 2-3 sessions, and then they have something, and then you ask the question, now who else should be involved into this conversation, so that it's not just you two wishing for this, but who else should contract for this preferred future. And this is how we can involve and invite more and more people depending on the topic we are working on. And the more people you invite, it never happens that they have a completely different idea about something. The more people you invite into the conversation, the more detail they'll bring from their level. So this is why it's a wonderful process when you get more and more people into the conversation, and then you see how it's really like a painting, that maybe the top management draws some sketches there on the canvas, and the more people are coming and the way we're going in the process is really richer and colorful, and they are painting their best ever painting. So, and it kind of pulls them like a magnet into that direction.
You're making me almost come full circle back to the humans, because what you've just described is an approach for org design, but it wasn't rooted, you weren't listing off methodologies, you're talking about humans, and it's going to be deeply reactive as to the OD practitioner or facilitator, who they are and who the people are, and how they felt getting up that morning. You know, it feels like we're stepping away almost from methodology, and it's about
yes, that's my way of saying that's how we can demystify it. So the more we talk about methodology language, the more distance we are building between us and our clients. And maybe another thing is also, who does the work or who asks these questions? I kind of got to a point with most of my clients currently that I'm actually trying to find who is there in the organization who really wants this thing happen. And I'm prepared to mentor that person so that he or she does the agreements, the conversations in the organization. So in a way learns on the job the methodology, but not methodology terms, but what could be the next steps. We talk about that. And with that, I'm actually enabling someone in the system to facilitate the process, which is even more taking out this mysterious, org designers are coming in to do the work. And these people do fabulous work and they learn org design, and then usually they want to learn even more about it, which is fantastic, so that they can further evolve or develop not just themselves but the organizations they are working in also.
Fantastic. Well, Elvira, that brings us to the end of our time today.
Yeah, you see, I can talk a lot about this.
It's such an inspiring story, and I think that demystifying and democratizing org design to make it something that's really part of every organization is changing the world. And you're definitely a worthy recipient of the Paul Tolchinsky Award, which is really pleased to see you winning that today. If people are interested to learn more or find out about what you've been talking about, what are the best resources for them to get in touch or to look out for?
So I'm very happy to connect on LinkedIn. I'm hanging out a lot there. I actually wrote a book that turned out to be 2 books about this methodology, which really has all the tools and case examples, even agendas, from all the way to how to use the solution-focused approach in organizations, really from contracting with the individual, joining the organization, through developing people, to team-level design. But in the team level, I don't mean functional teams, but more value-creating teams. And then going in the second book, we separated the knowledge and the tools for people who are like us, and I think it's also a special breed of people who like complexity and don't just want to solve things on the detailed design level, but really go through the steps of the solution-focused org design approach. And there are also canvases and stories and exercises you can start experimenting with. So in a way, it's called Go Beyond, the Solution-Focused Pocket Mentor for Work Evolutionists. So anybody who would like to have a mentor in their pocket, they can have the book. And besides these, I'm teaching a certified or accredited organization design course, which people who want to get certification afterwards, that's also part of the path. That's the Native in Change and the Master in Change course.
And you will talk about methodology in that one?
Yes, but also in a way to how to demystify it. Yeah.
And where is the book? Where does someone find the book?
Now, the funny thing about the book is available on Amazon, Books on Demand. Also, I publish there. Within the EU, you can easily order the wonderful, colorful version of it. I've put a lot of effort with 2 wonderful graphic designers so that it's not a textbook, but it's really colorful, easy pictures, light. And out of the EU, we had to publish a black and white version of it because the publishing house had only contracts with printing houses who are printing black and white. So here's our adaptability also tested. So out of the EU, you can actually order the black and white version of it. So book 1 is already available in black and white, and book 2, after the conference, I have to go back and do the...
And the perfect excuse to come and visit Hungary as well.
Indeed. So there are some books here available also on the conference. So I hope people will kind of put it into their pocket and take it home.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for today, Elvira. It's been really fantastic chatting with you.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for the opportunity.